BayRadio International on a Wednesday. And as always, we go legal, catching up with AlicanteLawyers.es, Payeth there and Heredia. And it's our privilege to welcome Antonio back to the studio today. Good to see you, sir.
Good, yeah, good as well.
You are one of the property experts last time I said you were in charge. I shouldn't say that because there are lots of people who work in the department.
There's more of us. I know. I'm the one.
That you told me you were in charge and then you get the blame. But
that's right.
I know. You're part of a big team of property experts at AlicanteLawyers.es. So we're going to talk about a couple of the cases that you've been dealing with recently and various other bits and pieces today. Legally, we have a big thing on the table from the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who proposed a property tax for non-Europeans of 100%. We're hearing a lot about big taxes and tariffs at the moment. So that was, how long ago was that? And when is it coming into force?
I would say that it was about a month ago, maybe 5-6 weeks. And what it went about is he announced that he was going to take 12 steps to tackle the housing crisis, which is a way for him to get into good graces of people. You know, he's on hot water in other matters.
Never knows when, we might have to have an election. So.
That's right, yeah. No, so he decided it's good for the popular, for the young vote and for the popular vote.
And it is a big issue. Of course, we've seen lots of demonstrations, haven't we? You know, right across Spain, all different regions across the islands.
I wouldn't say otherwise. It is definitely a big reason, but also it's a popular thing to stand, and it's easy to make a stand about it, which is, well, I don't like the housing crisis. So he announced 12 steps, and he mentioned them like couple lines each, and one of them was for non-Europeans that were buying houses in Spain was going to raise tax 100%. That by itself is not long enough for us to have a clear idea of what he meant, and they haven't clarified much since then. But, the legal field, as you may imagine, has written rivers of ink on the topic. A lot has been discussed, and what we understand that this talks about is that he's going to double the taxes. So if in the Alicante and Valencia region you pay 10% property transfer tax when you buy a second-hand house, which is the most common one, he's proposing to pay, for them to pay 20%. That has not moved from that statement, so it hasn't come or made up into a law to be proposed to the Congress at any time soon. And I'm unsure if he's ever going to be, because it has one problem.
It was about the announcement, I think, wasn't it, that he wanted to make sure that he said he was doing something about it.
Yes, of course. That's you announced 12 measures, with a wide variety. Some of them are going to connect with every part of the public, so you'll get your votes, and non-Europeans don't vote for him on the election, so It doesn't have to cater to them, so that you go. They can get the stick while the rest get the carrot. I get it.
What's the problem?
The problem with that is something slightly similar was done 10 years ago. So one or two prime ministers ago, they decided to eliminate the benefits that non-Europeans could get when inheriting properties in Spain. So you couldn't benefit from the tax breaks that we have. So they have one here in the Comunidad Valenciana, 100,000 euros per children, plus if it's the resident of the person that passed away, another 150,000. Well, anyway, so there's plenty of deductions, and in Murcia they have a 99% tax break on inheritance. Anyway, so you couldn't benefit, and that lasted about 2 years, and then both the Supreme Court and the European Court decided that was discriminatory, that you could not discriminate people for the source of origin for taxes. So they should be able to benefit from those tax breaks.
So the same rights as EU citizens.
That's right, yes. And in this case, as Spanish citizens as well, as a resident, really. So you could change between resident and non-resident, right? But not between nationalities if they own a property here. So the expert legal mind says, well, this is the same case, isn't it?
It's the same situation, certainly. Right. You're discriminating against people from a third country, if you like.
That's right, and only for tax reasons, right? So you pay more or less tax depending on where you come from. That doesn't seem too fair. So my guess in this case, so I'll take it personally, is that he'll either won't go through with it as it looks like it's going to be, so either change it, he doesn't go through with it, or if he goes through with it, then it'll last 1, 2, 3 years maybe, and then he'll have to pay a lot of money back to a lot of people.
Well, so it has to be written up in the state bulletin before it can come into law and be followed. I mean, even if that does happen, then I would presume that we might see a test case.
Yeah,
a firm will step up and go, right, let's try this, and then hopefully it would be rescinded pretty quickly rather than running for a couple of years. Well, that could be the case.
I guess that, well, if I were him, I'm sure I've read by now. Well, I should have consulted with an expert before, but now that he said it, probably he's got a lot of feedback from all kinds of political parties or the lobbies and such about this, how bad an idea this is for several reasons, besides curtailing the market, but, also for legal reasons doesn't stand on its own, doesn't hold water. But also, I believe no news about this has been, further development of this has progressed. So another important question that people pose to me regarding this is, okay, but I bought my property last week. Am I going to be affected? Meaning, is this going to be retroactive?
Post-dated,
I know this happens in the UK with some laws. That laws doesn't happen in Spain that much. I would say if you're going to get a benefit, then maybe you get a retroactive law for that benefit, something that you're getting extra, but not for things that are bad for you, like paying more taxes. So people that have already bought and they're buying on the short term, they are free to continue as usual.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Won't be affected. In fact, in Pellicera and Heredia, we've added a new clause into contracts, tackling this point, allowing the buyer to be able to get out of the conveyance in the event of taxes being raised to a substantial amount. If it's 1,000 euros more, well, then you'll pay it. Well, it's bad, but I'm sure you'll be able to afford it. You're buying a house. But if it's going to be, 10% more expensive to you, maybe it's not so much worthwhile for you anymore.
That's good to know, because, like you say, there were those raft of measures which were announced, and we were like, wow, okay, looks good on paper, sounds great, it's given him the headlines that he wanted. Certainly working for him. Of course, we're getting very close to the end of the golden visa scenario. Yes. I can't imagine now that anybody is able to apply for that anymore. 3rd of April cut off.
Yes, that's right. 3rd of April is the last day. Still, we have consultations about this. In fact, yesterday, I had a couple of clients coming in. They were looking to buy a property in Alicante over $500,000. They are British. One of them would buy it on behalf of the other and such. They're saying, how about the golden visa? And I looked at the clock and was like... No, I don't think so, no. So we discussed other options. There's other possible solutions for that. In this case, the wife was working for an international company, could change their workplace from the UK to Spain because it's a company that is working in both countries. So I told him, well, if you are going to move here, you could get a work visa. So you could forget about the golden visa. In fact, maybe this is even a better solution for you. Mm-hmm. So, I know the golden visa is the most famous, but it's not the only one by far. There's plenty of solutions for everybody to tackle. So if golden visa is true, that's no longer an option because it's like 3 weeks until it's definitely off. You should still, if considering moving, don't give up. Just contact a specialist, ourselves, for example, and let's talk about other possible solutions for you.
Yeah, there are a number of different ways to do this non-lucrative visa.
Yeah. And the Beckham law is still ongoing, so you can still benefit from that. That's not in risk at all. You've got the non-lucrative, you've got the work visa, you can get student visa if you can qualify for that. And also, there's a lot of people that are non-Europeans that can qualify for a European residency. If you've got ties, you're married to a European citizen, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, a little bit like, when it comes to international football, if your grandfather was say, Spanish, you can play for Spain.
That's right, yes. That's right. There's kind of small options that maybe you are not aware at this time, that there's another option for you that be as good as a golden visa, slightly worse, but still worth it, or even better.
Certainly something that you deal with all the time, so can match the right visa to the right fit to the right person. Yes. By no means is buying a property in Spain off the table at all. And lots of people are still doing, in fact, more Brits still than anybody else, right?
yes. Brits are still number one.
Couple of cases that you've got ongoing, then. Always interesting to hear, something live, what's happening in the market right now. And we've heard horror stories in the past, people buying properties and then finding out, okay, it's not got a contract for water or something. These things don't seem to happen too much anymore. They're the old stories that we used to hear in Spain, or is built somewhere where you just couldn't build. But there are still some things which get thrown up once you start to delve into a property, when somebody comes to you and says, right, this is what we want to buy, and then you do the due diligence.
Yeah, right, yes. I had a question by a client this week, in fact, and he calls me and says, Antonio, I've seen a property here. It was here in Denia. I loved it. An apartment, so nice. Okay, so I had the owner showing it to me and the agent, and the owner said, well, I just bought it last month, but for personal circumstances, I have to sell it again. It's like, okay, so just bought it last month means that he signed the deed at the notary, but they haven't had time yet to register it on the name of the seller.
Because there's a long process.
Yeah, it takes about 3 months, we would say. So if you just bought last month, then it hasn't been enough time. But, we can work around it. But then the seller said, yeah, I haven't paid the taxes, meaning the 10% property transfer tax. I'm not intending to do so because I'm selling the property to you. And, the client told me, that sounded a little bit weird to me. Oh, it's weird indeed. But the agent supported the seller. I said, yeah. This gets done all the time. That's absolutely no problem. You just pay your taxes and you'll be fine. Well, luckily, the client already had me on quick call and called me afterwards so I could tell him, please don't go ahead like that. Please don't sign anything yet. Yes, the previous person needs to pay the taxes. So let's recap. So you have somebody that buys a property, 200,000 euro apartment in Denia, really nice, pays the apartment, the 200,000 euro, and then they have 30 days to pay the 10% property transfer tax, the 20,000. And instead of doing so, puts the property on the market again and sells it to another person and tells them, I won't pay my taxes. You go ahead and pay yours and your purchase, and this is the bill and everything, and just go on. The problem with that is that if you don't pay the taxes on a property that you're buying, you are not getting it registered on your name. And you need an unbroken chain of ownership in order to have a property registered. So if my client accepts this offer, pays at the guy for the property, pays the 10% property transfer tax, and goes to the land registry to try and register, the land registry is going to tell, but
there's a gap.
There's a gap. Right. So I cannot have it registered to you until you pay the taxes for the previous guy and have that one registered.
Could that come on somebody who's been in that situation and found out afterwards? Then they might have to pay that.
Yeah, for sure. If you want the property registered under your name, then you must.
Then you end up paying tax twice on the sale of the property.
Right, that's right. So if the seller comes with that, then you need to tackle and address that situation before progressing. Either you correct them on that mistake and you tell them, well, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. The seller consults a lawyer and then they realize what the reality is and they do it. Or you tell them, okay, but I'm keeping your taxes just in case. And then with the money that you're keeping from the seller, you go ahead and pay. But, it's not costing out of your pocket. You're paying out of the seller's price. So, yeah, if that were to be the case, there's no problem. In fact, I've seen and I've done completions on the very same day. So we've got people buying a property at 9 a.m. today, and then at 11 a.m. then they go around at the same notary to a different notary, and they sell the very same property. That can be done. That's no problem on that. That's completely legal. You can change your mind on a property or make a deal out of the purchase and sale. That's absolutely fine. But, you have to be careful with the legalities. There's a lot of things pending when you buy a property. You need to pay the tax, you need to file the deed, someone has to take care of that, you need to pay the notary, land registry. So if it's both of them done on the same day, the last buyer, the one that's going to actually be the owner, from the time being, then that person needs to make sure that he's not going to pay all the expenses from the previous guy. So, but normally when these kinds of deals are made, these kinds of issues are clarified. So again, that is fine. If you're buying, as we were saying before, you have an off plan that you're going to buy, it's going to be finished in 2 years. And
we were talking about that off air, weren't we, actually? Because this is another scenario where, something is, like you say, you see it off before it's built. And actually, people are doing this because there is money to be made in this way. We worked it out on that. Actually, you can't really make that sort of money on anything at the moment. So if you go through it, so if you buy something that's going to be built in 2 years' time.
Yes.
So you put down 90,000 €100,000 deposit.
Yeah, for
instance?
example, yes. Normally you pay, in these cases, it's common to pay like 30% of the property you're going to buy. It's €300,000 new build apartment here in Javia, for example. You pay €90,000, 30%, right? But it's going to be completed in 2 years. So you've got time. And when the time comes to complete, maybe it's 3 or 4 months' time, you look at the market. You see that, the next phase on that promotion or the other promotion is up by €100,000 per apartment. You say, I could sell this at a profit. I've never owned it, but I could sell it as new. So there's two ways of doing it. Either you sell the contract, your purchase contract to another party, but that requires the agreement by the builder, by the first seller, for you not to change places with somebody else, to have somebody else take your place. Probably the seller is not going to agree because they're thinking, it's going to make money off of me. I'm doing all the work and you're going to sell it, make money out of anything. So what they do is you don't tell anything to the seller. They don't have any right to know. You just buy it one day and sell it later the same day or the following day. It's better to be done on the same day. So you really haven't had ownership of the property. You just have moved the keys to one place or the other. And then even if you pay your taxes, your VAT and your stamp duty, you can still make a profit. In these cases, I'm because this is a real case. In fact, they did really make money. They make 50,000, 60,000 euros off of the sale. For nothing. You paid 90, and then you're getting your 90 back plus another 50. So it was a really sweet deal for the client.
If you've got to spare €90,000, there's plenty, going off plan at the moment right across the area.
Really good idea.
So you could do that, get in now, and get out just about the point where they're due to be finished, and certainly make a profit at that point. And it's all legal, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And like I said, the bank isn't going to give you that sort of interest.
No.
And really, unless you're lucky on Bitcoin and Trump says the right thing at the right time, maybe you're not going to make it, are you? That's just not going to happen. But it's a little bit of speculation if you've got that sort of money to spare.
Yeah, and there's little risk in that. If you've got the money, there's little risk on it, because the worst thing that can happen is you don't manage to sell it, and then you end up with a really nice house, new building in Javia,
which at some point you're going to be able to sell anyway. A new property like that,
or rent it out, or you'll make money off of it some way or the other.
Okay, well, maybe the bank might give me a spare 90,000. You never know.
Well,
you don't have to tell them what you're doing, or they want to know what you're doing with their money, wouldn't they?
You'll probably want to go in with the bank if you're going to ask for them for 90,000 euros, probably with a gun. Yeah, maybe that's just more likely.
Might be the easier way. It's not what we should be telling people, though, Antonio.
That's true.
Tell us about a property that you've recently had to deal with, where you found out that it wasn't one property, even. It was more than it was being sold as more than one property, like a semi-detached, right?
That's right. Yes.
But it turns out the paperwork didn't say that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, these things happen. I wouldn't say maybe all the time, but they do come up more often than not. So in this case, I had a client bargain hunting. So they were really looking for a bargain, which is fine. A good deal, excellent. So they wanted something in the countryside, even if it was maybe not in the best condition. They were.
Good prices there.
That's right.
Properties to do up. These rural areas.
That's why the price for this property was excellent. So he finds a property is semi-detached for another. That's fine. You have neighbors. The others are not living there all the time, so you have your privacy, which was what the client was looking for, and they were looking to move into the property. And the property was a little bit run down, but nothing that a good renovation cannot sort out. And it was, according to them, not too expensive to do. So they check it. They love it. The price is really competitive, really nice. They come with me with the paperwork. I see the paperwork, and I ask him, okay, that's fine. So this is an inheritance, isn't it? I said, yeah. There's like 4 heirs. 4? I've got 15 people here.
15?
Yeah, there were 15 owners. I don't know. That's this. Something must have happened. Okay, let me talk to the agent. And then the agent knew some of it. So it turns out the property was built 100 and something years ago, right? And it was one big house. But at some point in the past, let's say 100 years, they decided to divide it in two. So they they build a wall between the properties, even though, it's one big structure. So they share a common wall, but separate entrances to different doors. Mm-hmm. They even had different meters, different cadastral references. So
really? Okay.
Yeah. So they did part of the work. Different EB bills. So you have one local tax bill for one local tax bill for the other. But on the land registry, there was still remaining as one property. And due to the characteristics of the plot, it cannot be divided. The plot is not big enough to actually, cut it in two. It cannot be done. They will, for the time being, or say forever, but we don't know.
So I guess that's how they managed to get so far with the paperwork, as far as was possible.
And that's why the price was so good.
Uh-huh.
The problem with the house was not evident when you go and visited it. It was on the papers. So it's like, let's say, a hidden defect of the property.
And it looked like a semi-detached property.
Yeah. It looks like a perfectly semi-detached property, and it really, really looks like that, and because it's completely separate entries, different patios, all divided. So I told the client, well, the problem with this is you're buying into a community, technically. You're going to share ownership of the whole thing, of both properties. We can arrange a contract with the owners of the other one and include that on the deed, so we understand what physically means each property and have an agreement that you respect the boundaries and pay for the common elements, but, have exclusive use and right of enjoyment. But you have a problem. If the other people come with a debt that affects the property, it may affect your share as well. You may be deprived of your property with a pay, but you may be. And also, if the other people decide that they want to sell, and they want to sell the whole thing, they can force the court sale for you. In this case, which I think is the most problematic case, the case the other people go crazy. Say, no, we're selling the whole thing. We take you to court to force you to sell the whole house. Because remember, from a legal point of view, it's just the one house. Uh-huh. So you are in a co-ownership with your wife with a house, you can force the sale. So this is the same
Would be
thing.
the same situation.
It's the same situation. So in that case, I told him, well, you're at an advantage because the other house is way nicer than yours. The other was on sale for 140,000 euros, and yours is just 60. Even with a renovation, maybe it's 90, maybe 100. Still, the other one is 140. So they are not going to do it. They're not going to force the sale of the property because they are the ones to lose. The property will be divided, the resulting price will be divided 50-50.
Equally, I see.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So if it gets forced the sale now, it's 200,000 for the whole thing, but you'll get 100 when you spend 60 and the other get 100. So... right?
Sounds like a good deal.
Sounds like a good deal. Ideally,
if it happened.
To sort this out, the definitive way of sorting this out is buying both. You buy both, and they transform them again into one property, and that's it. But the client told me, no, I'm decided, I love it. This is the one that I want. I told them, okay, but what about your heirs? It's like, I don't have any children. I don't care what happens. It's just my wife and me. We're going to live there until we die.
Yeah, but hang on, one of them will still inherit.
Well, yeah.
You would
one
have
of them will
inherit. Unlikely they're going to die at the same time.
Yes, of course. Will inherit, but still, even though if the inheritance cannot go through for any reason, she's still owner of part of the property by herself. So, she's still in it.
But it would also mean then it would be difficult to sell in that scenario.
It will be impossible to sell unless you sell both to the same person.
Well, yeah.
Unless...
or to the other owners.
Yes, unless you find another couple on the same situation as these clients. So despite the disclaimer, which is a really big one, and my warning that, are you sure that this is what you want to do? The clients are progressing, are decided to buy.
They're going ahead.
Yeah, they're going ahead. They know the risks. So if you've made an informed decision, I'm happy with that. But they fully are aware of the risks, but now that they know, they're progressing with it, with the correct caution and taking the correct measures and such and such. But still, it's still a risky situation.
It is, isn't it? Because we were talking off air again about the situation with just normal inheritance and a family of, say, 3 people inheriting and the difficulties that throws up.
Yes.
In this scenario, you're getting into a situation with a number of other people who aren't even family. You don't even know.
That's right.
Not even from the same country as you.
That's right.
And you're risking that same sort of issue.
There's things that you can do to alleviate or reduce the risk, which is... let's imagine that you are buying into a community, in a flat in a building, right? Mm-hmm. You are buying. It's not the same situation, but
it's a bit more cut and dried. It's a more standard situation.
Yes. But just to establish the comparison. Mm-hmm. So what they have in a community, they have bylaws, rules in the community in which they decide who has to pay for the cleaning, who's the administrator, how we do this, how we do that, if we take an insurance, who repairs the lift, for the common elements. So you do the same here. So tell them, okay, we'll draft rules, right? So we can work rules of the game, rules of living. So you can own the property with the other people. You are all aware whose owns what, with blueprints and plans and everything, and what are your rights and what you've promised that you're going to do. You can always break those promises, but it will be at a penalty.
Yeah.
We'll insert those bylaws on the deed with the obligation for any future owners to insert those as well. Let's say like a passing down tradition. It's true that it's not infallible, and this may, fail at some point, but it does reduce the risk because everywhere is aware.
And it certainly may well be in your favour at a later point, where one of the party may pass away and the other one does want to sell.
Yeah.
If you've done as much as you possibly can, and actually, of course, there is the precedent there under that scenario that you highlighted in a community where people buy an apartment and they share those other areas, and there are things are all set out legally. So there is that. Yeah. In law, it's all about precedents, right?
Yeah. And you have to have for this. You need to have an open mind and a little bit of imagination.
Yeah.
To try and find out with a solution that's tailored for, in this case, completely tailored for the client.
Interesting. Great. Thanks for sharing those with us. It's always great to hear, about something that's actually happening right now. And it's in all countries, with buying and selling property, it's never straightforward. There are obviously lots of transactions that go through straightforward. Everything's normal. But, you do get, some strange things from time to time.
Always interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Now, Tony, thank you very much indeed. And I think you're with us again in a couple of weeks.
Yes, that's right. I think next time I'm coming as well. Yes.
All right. We'll see you then. Thank you very much indeed for this afternoon. Find out more,
my pleasure.
As always, at alicantilawyers.es. It's the best way to find Payeth There and Heredia online. alicantilawyers.es, all in English. A number of other European languages as well as Russian, and all sorts. But you can find out all about buying and selling property in Spain, along with all of the other legal services that Payeth There and Heredia offer: the immigration, tax and fiscal services, and international law, all kinds of things.